Okay, welcome to our lecture again. This event is supported by the Daniels Fund Program in Professional Ethics Education. I'm the co-director of this program. My name is Qin-Han. I'm assistant professor in Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. And thank you for coming. We're fortunate to have, very lucky to have Professor Yanming from Clemson University, who's a professor of Chinese and philosophy, to give us a talk today. And I'm going to briefly introduce Dr. An's background. The first time I met Dr. An was in 2009, when I was a graduate student in China, and he was a visiting professor, chair visiting professor, and he taught me everything. 2004, five. Yeah. And he taught me everything about American society, politics, and ethics, and I got to know ethics. The first book I read really about ethics was about McIntyre, the history of ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I learned something else, like Isaiah Berlin, the political philosopher, the two concepts of liberty. And then I got so fascinated with kind of philosophical research in the U.S. and he really helped me. Now he's still my mentor. I feel very glad to have him as my mentor, and what's really I learned a lot of things from him. What I really found interesting is that is valuable also to me as a professor now is a good teacher and a good scholar. They're the same thing. They're not separate. So I love working with my students and also care about their needs. Okay, so Dr. An received his PhD in Asian languages and cultures from the University of Michigan, 1997. And he received an MA and a BA in philosophy from Fudan University of China. And before coming to the United States, and he served as Associate Director of Research Section of Historical Materialism at the Institute of Philosophy, Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. He joined the faculty of Clemson University in 1999 after 2 years teaching in University of Michigan and Princeton University. The courses he has taught refer to ancient and modern Chinese philosophy, pre-modern Chinese literature, Chinese Buddhism, comparative philosophy, and Chinese language at all levels, modern and classic. Dr. An served as the president of the Association of Chinese Philosophers in North America in 2005 to 2007, as a visiting professor at several Chinese academic institutions, and also editorial board members for 3 international journals. And in 2017, Dr. An received the John B. and Thelma A. Gentry Award for Teaching Excellence in the Humanities in the College of Architecture, Arts, and Humanities at Clemson University. With that, I'm turning over to Dr. An.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Zhu.
You need to do this again. Okay.
Thank you for coming here. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to discuss something I am interested. I hope you are also interested. And this morning I have talked about a different topic. It's family love and its extension, making a comparative study between Christian love, Christian universal love, and Confucian graded love. And this afternoon, I would shift to a completely different topic. It's a topic even larger than what we have discussed in this morning. It is the idea of cyclicality in Chinese thought. Before I started my talking, I have to introduce some concept. Otherwise, it's really hard for us to develop our discussion. First of all, I have to introduce this concept. It's called axial period. Axial period. Are you familiar with this concept? This is a concept from Karl Jaspers. I know you heard this name, Karl Jaspers. And originally, there was a concept from Hegel. It is axis. It's axis of history. according to Hegel, there is axis for human history. This is the birth of Jesus Christ. So all the time before his birth, prepared for his birth, and all the time after his birth, got the meaning from his work. This is called axis of human history. Jaspers challenged this idea, saying that sounds good. However, it has two problems. The first is there's no empirical evidence to prove the existence of this axis. That's the first. The second is even worse. If you are a Christian, you accept this idea, saying, okay, yes, Jesus Christ is the axis of entire human development. But if you are a Chinese, if you are an Indian, if you are from some African tribe, you will not accept this idea. Jaspers said we have to find a new idea to replace this concept. As a result, he invented this concept. This concept has been accepted by most of scholars, I believe, in the world, not only in the West, as it's also in China, everywhere. Most of people accepted this concept. Here is the concept. Here is the idea. According to him, in the time period from 800 BC to 200 BC, in this time period, there were 3 cultural centers without any contact emerged at the same time in the world. First is India, then China. The third is the West. The West has 3 components. The first is Iran. And if you studied Nietzsche, you know he has a famous book. And here, Iran. Then here is the Middle East. Prophets in the Old Testament. Nothing about the New Testament, because it is time before the birth of Jesus Christ. And the last one here is Greek. They share many things in common. One of them is this. According to Jaspers, they realized 2 things at the same time. The one is powerful. Another is the powerless. They realized the 2 things at the same time. They realized one thing called this capital being. This capital being may be the God, may be heaven for Chinese, may be universe. But anyway, it is huge vastness. And people, individual human being, they realize the 2 things at the same time. The more they realize this being, capital being, is powerful, the more they realize how powerless they are. Right? You think about this, compared with the vastness of universe, compared with all powerfulness of God, who we are. We are even smaller than a dust in the universe, right? We are in this particular situation. We have these 2 consciousness at the same time, and there is tension in our heart to the 2 directions. On the one hand, we realize this capital being is so huge, so vast. On another hand, we realize we are so small. These 2 directions just hurt our own heart. We just feel, we suffer from this tension. We have to release ourselves from this tension, All these three centers find a way to release ourselves from this tension. Because of this effort, they created great religion and great philosophy. They use actually the same way. For example, I give you some example. We talk about holiness. This is a Judeo-Christian way. Yes, we share something in common with God. This is holiness. We can be saved because we share something in common with God. This is holiness. God never promised animal they can be saved. But God promised human being there's a possibility for you to be saved. And to emphasize this commonality between me as a small individual and God. And for Indian Buddhism, they created a concept. This concept is really special. Anytime when you study something about India, you have to keep this point in your mind. They talk about this. One thing called the Buddha nature. When we talk about a human being, Indian people talk sentient being. This is sentient being. Different translation. Sometimes it is translated as conscious being, means being with consciousness. According to Mahayanist Buddhism, there are 10 levels. They all belong to the same sentient being category. Like us, we have a category, we have a concept like human being. We have Asian people, we have Native American people, and we have European American people, we have African American people. And these, all of them belong to the same category, human being. But they have larger category. This is a sentient being. From lower level, it's called denizen of hell. Live in the hell. And the second one is called hungry ghost. What is hungry ghost? Yes, if you go to some museum of natural history, you see a kind of dinosaur, Argentinosaurus. Let's see Argentinosaurus. I love to use this one to see. It has huge belly, but very small, very small mouth. Huge belly. It's always in hunger. Suffer from this hunger. When I was a boy, every time my grandma always called me a hungry ghost. I have no idea because I always talk with my grandma, I'm hungry. My grandma said, you're a hungry ghost. I have no idea what hungry ghost is. Until I studied Buddhist philosophy, I know it's bad words. Yes. And here is animal. Animal is here. Then this part is called asura. There's no English word. It means fighting spirits. These spirits fight every day. Then after this, you have a new one. This is called heavenly being. All of them are mortal. Heavenly being, something like a fairy, something like a mermaid. Little mermaid fell in love with the boy. The grandma talked with her. You have to get rid of this boy because the most he can live in this world is 100 years. We mermaid can live for 300 years, right? But still, they belong to the same category. Here. Totally, there are 6 levels. And beyond these 6 levels, the first is called Arhat. arhat. Chinese call it luohan. It's arhat. This one is called private Buddha. Private Buddha. Then you have another one. It's called Bodhisattva. Sometimes I'm really proud of myself. How it's possible for me to memorize such a long word. And Bodhisattva. Then this is the Buddha. That's Buddha or Buddhahood. I have to talk several very interesting, very important points. The first is all of them share one thing in common. This is the Bodhisattva, Buddha nature. They all share the Buddha nature. It's similar to Christian idea, Judeo-Christian tradition. All the human beings share the same holiness. And for Indian tradition, for Buddhist tradition, they all share Buddha nature, Buddha nature. If you share Buddha nature, there's a possibility. Here, below this line, all these 6 beings are mortal. There's something called karma and rebirth. Karma and rebirth. Perhaps you have heard this karma. Karma means conduct and consequence. Everything depends what you have done in this world. And what you have done will decide what kind of being you will be reborn for next life. We are always in this cycle, to suffer from the what kind of cycle? Birth and aging, sick, and death. Always in the same cycle. So the idea is to escape from this one, to go to this area. This area is called nirvana. Today I saw a boy wearing a T-shirt. There's huge words here, nirvana. I love to ask him, what does nirvana mean? You don't have to suffer from this cycle. This is called nirvana. In nirvana, still, the Chinese is Nieppan, in Chinese, okay. Still, they are 4 levels. Everything depends this. Buddha got truth by himself. He loves to share with everybody. And Bodhisattva got truth from the Buddha, and he loved to share with people. I've answered your question because of this sharing. This Buddha, this Bodhisattva is close to Jesus Christ. He is a bridge to combine this world and holy world. For any religion, you must have this central figure. So Confucianism has no such central figure. This is why Confucianism is philosophy. But this Buddhism and Christianities are religion. They have the same person like this. Now, he got truth from the Buddha. He loved to share with people in this lower category, to help them to go to nirvana, just like Jesus Christ came to this world to help people, to sacrifice himself. Same idea. Then this one called the private Buddha. Maybe this private Buddha is smarter than Bodhisattva because he got the truth by himself. But he's selfish. Don't want to share with people. Just keep this truth for himself. This is for private Buddha. And this one, Arhat. Arhat learned from the Buddha. And similar to the private Buddha, just keep the truth for himself. Enjoy the happy life in nirvana by himself. Because of this reason, we have 2 great categories. This is a category for the cycle. We all belong to this one until we escape from this one to nirvana. When we were in nirvana, we are safe. We will not fall back. not fall back. So this is ideal. This is ideal for the Indian tradition. We go there. This is why because of this kind of thinking, you understand why, for example, Tibetan people are loyal to Dalai Lama. And they intentionally suffered so much because they want to accumulate good karma. Because compared with these unlimited cycles, this life is nothing. Because this cycle will continue, repeat itself without end. Compared with this repeated cyclical development, this 100 years of life is nothing. Many of us cannot understand their mentality. Why do they love to suffer themselves? Because of this kind of thinking. The point is this: you see, all the sentient beings share Buddha nature. Because of this sharing, theoretically, all of them have opportunity, have possibility to go to nirvana, because they all have the Buddha nature. Just like in Christianity, because we all have the holiness, there is a possibility for us to go to paradise. Same thinking pattern. And this morning, when I talk about Christian universal love and the Chinese graded love, you may find they use the same thinking pattern, but they use different words. Superficially, they are so different. However, essentially, they are the same. This is the idea. I've talked about the Judeo tradition, talk about this Buddha nature, and the Chinese tradition is this. Here's Chinese tradition. Chinese tradition talk about they talk about this, heaven and humans. Now, unity of heaven and humans. This is the idea. Heaven and humans share the same moral principle. Yes, you cannot explore every point of heaven because heaven is too large to be exhausted by any human effort. However, since there is a commonality between heaven and humans, you just focus on your own heart. Because from your own heart, you can find the same thing, same principle from heaven. I have listed all the three major approaches. You find the same thing. Let me go back to talk about this. And there is a tension. There's a tension in our heart, in our mind. On the one hand, we realize this capital being is all-powerful. It's extremely large. On another hand, we realize our individual is so small. We have to find a solution to release ourselves from this tension. Otherwise, we always suffer. And the solution is to find a commonality between this big one and a small one. The point is focus on our own heart, because that's the only way to find a commonality. You go to look for universe, explore universe, no way, because it's too large to be exhausted. But our heart, our mind is always there. We know our own mind, our own heart. At the same time, we know the essence of this capital being. And there's three cultural centers. It is India, China, and the West. The West is the most complicated because of this complexity. it is also the most dynamic. Dynamic, because sometimes this kind of conflict, this confrontation, this contact with each other may give people more opportunity to develop themselves. This is for the West. And here I have given you a big background. Against this background, let's start our talking. And here, let me move this concept first. There are several major traditions for the view of history. The first is a traditional idea. Traditional idea. This is Western idea. Traditionally, majority American thinker believe there are two views about history. The first is the linear. Another is the cyclical. Two views. St. Augustine has been viewed as the first person to make this distinction. According to him, it is this. Linear view is represented by Judeo-Christian tradition. Judeo-Christian tradition. The idea is this. There is absolute beginning point of human history, and there is also absolute ending point in human history. There is no repetition. Why is it called absolute beginning point? Is because of this. Where is the beginning point? Creation. Creation of human and the world. Why it is absolute? And if you ask someone, who gave you life? Who gave you birth? The answer is my mom. Who gave the birth to your mom? My mom's mom, until to this point. You cannot continue to ask a question. Who gave the birth to God? Who gave the birth to God? If you go to Christian church asking this question, you will be kicked out. Pastor will be offended. How could you ask this question? This is called absolute beginning point, meaning you cannot ask any question continuously. There's an ending point. The final judgment. Final judgment. You read the Old Testament and New Testament, no further description about anything after final judgment. What we can learn is only that we will enjoy eternal life. We will enjoy eternal life. But if you have eternal life, how should you spend this eternal life? Every day to eat this kind of thing, to drink a beer, to chase a girl, but no description at all. No description at all. Just stop here. This is called linear. This is called a linear view. And for this is called Judeo-Christian. And another one is called Greco-Roman view. This is a cyclical view. This is cyclical view. The idea is this. No absolute beginning, no absolute ending. The cycle repeats itself again and again. This is called Greco-Roman view about human history. You read Plato, especially in three dialogues, in Statesman and in Laws, especially in these two. He gave us a classical answer about that. The idea is this. This is cosmos. We human live in cosmos, in the cosmos. And our life must undergo the same cyclical development with the cosmic development. We cannot control the cosmic development. We have to follow it. There's a concept called great year. Great years. According to Plato, after perhaps 12,000 years, this great year will repeat again. At this point, there is total destruction. And our solar system, our world will be destroyed completely. Along with this total destruction, our human being also disappear. This is called cyclical development. Then Plato offered two possible scenarios. One is everything was destroyed, and humans. There is a concept for him called earthborn. From the earth, humans was born. How do you understand this? Actually, sometimes people may think it is absurd. It is not really absurd. You think about Darwin's evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution. First, we have a single cell being. Then we have fish. We have a reptile. Then we have a reptile including dinosaur. Then we have a mammal. Then we have a human being. Right? And Plato has conceived of this concept. Actually, in the history of science, this concept influenced Darwin. It is not absurd. Because if the time is really, really long, for Indian tradition, the whole cycle it is this for India, something like this. Indian people love mathematics. One cycle is 4,320,000 years. This is one cycle. And for Plato, for a Greek philosopher, it's shorter. It's like this. This is one possible scenario. And another possible scenario is this. In the huge natural disaster, the Great Flooding, for example, if you check the history of cultures in that area, they all share the same story about the flooding. And of course, we are familiar with this one, Noah's story. Yes, Noah's story. You have something really similar in Greek mythology. This idea is this, the second scenario. When the flooding come here, it destroyed the people living nearby ocean. But mountaineer survived. And however, the people living by the sea developed and more advanced civilization. They built up a library to accumulate a lot of knowledge there. And in the mountaineer, they do not have the opportunity. Yes, when I came here, I thought, okay, if there is a great flooding, and the people in Colorado will survive, and the people in New York will be destroyed. Yes, it is true. In normal time, they are bragging, talking with you, I'm New Yorker or something, right? And you see, and according to Plato, actually, my position is much better than yours. This is called Greco-Roman. And for India is this. Indian actually has two levels for the cycle. When you talk about this one, this is cosmic cycle. Let me go back to the Greek. Actually for Plato, he has another cycle. This cycle is human cycle. I have to make it complicated. You have to distinguish this human to be two categories. Humankind as a species and human individual. Human individual, they are different. Humankind as a species will go with cosmic cycle to move. Nothing you can do. However, for human individual, since our life is short, 100 years, and we may talk about immortality. We may talk about immortality of human species. Compared with the life of human species, our life is short. So we may see, yes, my life, I am mortal, but human species is immortal. Plato's idea is this. Grandfather give birth to father. The father give birth to this son. Son give birth to the son and the son and the son. So you look at this one. You look at this picture. Interesting is this. They all repeat the same cycle, right? All the individual life repeats the same cycle. And the human immortality realizes it itself, not in a single human being, but in this chain. This, the cyclical idea at the individual level in the Greek philosophy. Indian philosophy is different. As we talked before, we talk about India. This is cosmic cycle. It moved on and on and on. Every cycle take 4,320,000 years. Human species will go with this cycle to have total destruction and reconstruction again and again. That's a human species. However, human individual, we have talked about karma, rebirth. This is a cycle at individual level. They have two levels. One is a cycle at a human species level. Another is a cycle at human individual level. You have to distinguish these two things. Then I would move to the Chinese one. I've talked too much. And if you have any question, please stop me. Yes, I always encourage my audience to interrupt me. And at this point, is everything clear? Are you sure? Yes? Okay. All right. Then I talk about the Chinese. Chinese, there is a subtle difference. There's a subtle difference. When you talk about India, you talk about the Hellenic. Actually, many scholars believe the Greek is substantially different from Roman in many senses. As far as the view of history is concerned, Indian and Greek is closer. They prefer to use this term. Indo-Hellenic tradition. And here I would talk about the Chinese one. When you check Indo-Hellenic tradition, you find that they always have two levels. The one is cosmic level. Then another one is human level. And there is no direct connection between these two parts. Cosmic cycle, nothing we can do. Human being as a species, human being as individual, nothing we can do. And this human level, in this way or that way, to repeat itself again and again. But Chinese, the first is no. The Chinese never ask a question. What happened if there is no involvement of human being? They do not raise this kind of question from very beginning. It means they always understand this heaven or universe through its relationship with humans. This is the key point. Anytime when you study Chinese natural philosophy of nature, you always keep this point in your mind. Because when you read Indian classics, you read Greek classics, they have a lot of discussion about objective nature, without any involvement of human being. But when you read Chinese classics, every time they always talk about heaven in its relationship with human being. They thought a mother nature, a heaven, without participation of human is nothing for human being. From very beginning, there is a substantial difference between the Chinese approach and Indo-Hellenic approach. It has positive consequence. It has negative consequence. The negative consequence is modern science, geometry, really developed from this tradition. Indians are very good at math, at number, very, very good. And even today, you go to Silicon Valley, a lot of Indian engineers, they are very, very good in dealing with number. And here, the Hellenic tradition, they developed the geometry and function as a kind of foundation of modern science. But Chinese didn't do that, because they don't want to understand, to explore a nature without any connection with human being. This is the first point. Instead, they developed a kind of a cyclical view. The cyclical view is this. The first is they find there's something called heaven. This heaven may be understood either as anthropomorphic deity with will and purpose. The second one is kind of astronomical phenomena. For example, conjunction of several stars, conjunction of several planets at the same time. When this kind of thing happened, there must be something serious happened in human world, because these two parts always join together. And first of all, in the Han Dynasty, this morning I talked about the Han Dynasty. In the Han Dynasty, they developed a kind of cultural cycle. The idea is this. I have to talk about Chinese history. Sorry. So it is this. First dynasty in Chinese history is called the Xia Dynasty. It lasted for several hundred years. Then this is Shang Dynasty, the second one, also several hundred years. Then Zhou Dynasty. Then in the Zhou Dynasty, there are two time periods. One is called spring and autumn. This time period in which Confucius lived. And here is Warring States period. In this time period, there were 100 small states fought against each other. And in this time period, the only 7 left. Then fought against each other finally. This is Qin Dynasty. Qin reunified the whole country in 221 BC. This year is very important. This Qin Dynasty is responsible for many things. Construction of the Great Wall, and many for unified measurement system in China, even unified writing system in China. People are allowed to talk in any way you like However, you have to write in the same way. It is smart. It's really, really smart, because you simply cannot control your tongue when you start to talk. And for Japanese people, generally speaking, they do not have F sound. Generally speaking, they do not have F sound when they pronounce something like father. Unless they have very specific training, normally they would say father. Philosophy, they would say philosophy. If you force them saying you have to pronounce in F instead of P, otherwise your head will be beheaded. That's not fair. That's not fair. It's really, really not fair. But if you write in the same way, it's possible, right? It's possible, because easy to control your hand, then control your tongue. Okay, so this is for Qin Dynasty, and this is Qin Dynasty. Very interesting. After 14 years, collapsed. It took 200 years. 5 great kings working one by one, successively, one by one, finally reunified the whole country. However, after 14 years, this all-powerful empire collapsed. Then another one is the Han Dynasty. This Han Dynasty lasted for 400 years. Really, really huge dynasty. In that time, the philosophers in the Han Dynasty developed a concept called cultural cycle. It is this. He said, okay, this is Xia Dynasty. It's a black system. Then Shang Dynasty here, it is white system. And here is red system. It's a Zhou, then Xia, Shang, and Zhou. Because this one is too short, go back to Han Dynasty. Han Dynasty should repeat the principle of Xia Dynasty. The principle of Xia Dynasty is loyalty. And for Shang Dynasty is piety. And Zhou is refinement. The philosophers in Han Dynasty encouraged the emperor to repeat the Shang Dynasty. According to their understanding, the cycle will continue on and on and on, this cycle. However, it's around the 3rd century. From 3rd century to 6th century, China had been in a political disaster, divided into many small countries. And during this time period, the Buddhism was introduced into China too. And if you have so many small dynasties, where is this regularity? Where is the regularity for this cyclical development? And so this idea was discredited. And at the same time, the concept of heaven changed. Originally, the concept of heaven is either anthropomorphic deity or long-term astronomical change. In parallel, there is cultural cycle to repeat again and again. It's also a long term. However, because of this political upheaval, nobody continued to believe this cultural cycle, because they couldn't find this. At the same time, they have new understanding about heaven. This heaven, they understood this heaven basically as 3 things. The first is regular movements of sun and moon and star, regular movements. The second one, for seasons to come one by one. The third is the cyclical development of organism, including plant, animal, and human being. and human being. You think about that. All of them are short-term, compared with Indian understanding or Greek understanding. And dynastic, there is dynastic cycle. Dynastic cycle is also short-termed, And heaven is short-termed. Dynastic change is also short-termed. Developed from culture 1 to this dynastic cycle. The Chinese cycle, here I would tell you the characteristic of Chinese cycle, dynastic cycle. The first one for Chinese tradition, no concept of great year. No concept of a great year. Indo-Hellenic, for these two great traditions, they all have something like a great year. That's for Greek word. For Indian word, they have Mahayuga. Mahayuga is the same thing. Means periodical interruption. Then repeat the same thing again and again. This is uniform rotation. It's the same thing, repeat again and again. However, in Chinese tradition, there is no concept of a great year. It means there is no such idea for periodic interruption. The whole thing, just like a chain, continues to develop. This is the first. And the second is this. They emphasize, okay, this year there is 4 seasons. Next year, there's also 4 seasons. But the 4 seasons in this year is different from the 4 seasons last year. Make sense? Okay, you talk about the wheat, for example. Wheat as a species or wheat as individual. They are different. If you have a chain, this is the development of wheat as a species. But this is the seed A. Seed A give birth to seed B. Seed B give birth to seed C. Then this chain will continue continuously without end. Same thing, they use this pattern. This is dynasty. Rise and fall. And another dynasty repeats the same cycle, rise and fall, and rise and fall. It's the same thing for the family, And this family, my grandfather is here. He has a cycle. My grandfather has his cycle. And I have my cycle. Then my son, my grandson, this chain continues. If you call them as a cycle, yes, because all the links share one thing in common. This is cycle. There's a cycle. All the links repeat the same cycle. However, if you look at things from another point, all the links are different. All the links has their own individuality. This is the Chinese way. The Chinese thinkers emphasize that, okay, all the dynasties repeat the same cycle. However, all the dynasties has a different reason for it rise, its rose, and fell. You have to study them individually. There is no such thing as uniform rotation because there is individuality there. We think about our family. If you check our lineage, you find something. My grandpa may be greater than my grandpa. My grandpa is better than my dad. I'm better than all of them. Okay? Maybe, yes, something like this, possible. possible. Wow, you have a big one. You have big one here. You have big one here. They all share something in common. All the links share one thing in common. They all experience the same cycle. No matter how great, we have to repeat the same thing. This is the Chinese way. This is the Chinese way. It is cyclical view, but this cyclical view is so different from the Indo-Hellenic cyclical view. And this is why some scholars, some Western scholars, one of them is Joseph Needham. Joseph Needham is really a genius. He's really, really genius. He said, if you study Chinese history, Joseph Needham organized for the publication of multi-volumes about the science and technology in China. The Chinese government organized scholars from 2 academies to translate his book. There are 2 central academies in China. One is Academy for Sciences. Another is Academy for Social Sciences. The scholars from one academy cannot finish the translation because it refers to so many fields. According to him, it's very interesting. He said, since Chinese history is so long, if you want to pick up example about a cyclical view of linear view, you can always find example. And I have to say, both of them existed in Chinese tradition. However, if I'm forced to pick up one, I would pick up the linear view. His argument is this. Okay, and there is no end. Sometimes I ask my students in my school, I said, what is your understanding about the progress? Right now, majority people believe and progressive view is the best to describe the human development. Right? Majority people. I would ask them, how do you understand progressive? This progress. Progress may be in 2 senses. In the sense of development, in the sense of betterment. They are different. Progress in the sense of development, like this, continuous development. And another one, progress in the sense of betterment, means the generation by generation, we become better and better and better in morality, in knowledge, and in the entire society. These are different understanding, right? And Needham said, if you understand progress in this sense, in the development, and the Chinese one actually is very close to the concept of linear. It will continue to go without end, just continue to go. This is the idea. So I just want to show you, although almost all the major civilizations, ancient civilizations, actually belong to the category of cyclical development. Let me talk about Judeo-Christian. I have presented. First is Indo-Hellenic. That's Indian and Greek, and Chinese. Let me talk about Judeo-Christian. Traditionally, we believe Judeo-Christian represents linear view. Linear view. Majority people believe this. Hellenic is called uniform rotation. But this Chinese is really, really different. It emphasizes specialty of each link. Each link. See, there is a chain developed. But this chain has a lot of links. Each link is different. They emphasize individuality. There's no such thing as uniform rotation. There is a rotation. Every cycle is a rotation, but they are not uniform. They are different. They are really, really different. And Judeo-Christian, actually, it has two histories. One is sacred history. Sacred history. I like to use different words. It's one grand cycle. One grand cycle. No repetition. No irreversibility. That's different from Indo-Hellenic tradition. It is this. You came from God. After long development, go back to the God. Go back to the God. And another word is called one time, one way time, one way time. Either one grand cycle, another is one way time, one way time. And another one is for secular history. Secular history. For secular history, it's the same. Dynastic change. Dynastic change is always repeat itself for secular history. So if I ask you a question for this one grand cycle actually is for individual. It's for individual. Right? I was born in this world with original sin. After my life, I go back to God. Go back to God. That's for each individual. And this one is for entire humankind. So salvation is the issue of individual. Salvation is not issue for entire human being. Somebody will go to paradise, somebody like me may go to hell. Yes, may go to hell. We cannot say God promise everybody go to paradise. No such thing. It is individual issue. This is individual. Sometimes I ask my students saying, someone died. Just wait there for final judgment, or first coming, first serve. You died first, then you go to paradise first. First coming, first serve. They said, I have no idea. I haven't thought about that. Maybe first come, first serve. That sounds more reasonable. But we don't know. For Russian Orthodox tradition, they have this idea. The corpse, when somebody died, the corpse will stay there. In the final judgment, your soul will come to join this corpse, to make you yourself anew. It has influence. Lenin died. His corpse was kept there because of